So my name's Franz Logan. I'm responsible in the state of Baden-Württemberg for the Immobile BW. The Immobile BW is a state agency dealing with the transformation of the automotive sector with new mobility solutions. And we deal as well with the energy system and the change of the energy system as we do, for example, with the digitalization of mobility in future. Zoltan later will give you a deeper view into the IT topics, and I will try to give you an overview of what is going around. And as far as I understood, Olli and Janne, you had also be interested to have a bit of insight into what is going around in the German automotive industry actually. Some things in brief. There is three major levers which influence at least the automotive industry worldwide. The one thing is more and more we see in electrification. It starts up with electrification within the car, at least in the electric engines, in seats, in windows and whatever, but as well as electrification of the driveline. The second thing is that all the mobility machines, one of them is cars, buses, passenger cars, but all the machines have the goal at least to be run CO2 free, greenhouse gas free. What means at least we have to change the drive lines to an energy supply, what makes CO2 freeness possible. And this is at least, there is three possibilities to be done. The one is electrification, the second is hydrogen, and the third is carbon hydrogens, which are produced renewable. And the third big influence is the digitalization. The one thing is the onboard technology, the other is the connected technology. So this is at least the three main topics. Everybody can name the headlines, but what does it really mean? If we look, for example, to CO2 in Germany, it is nearly the same all over Europe. What we see is the emissions of the mobility means that 60% of the emissions is done by passenger cars. A third is done by commercial vehicles, including buses. And the rest is at least air traffic, coastal traffic, shipping, whatever. This is the German view to it, not included in the national CO2 footprint is the international air traffic, this is in the balances is accounted in other parts of the balance. Nothing is forgotten. So where are our influences? The next topic, what I want to name, as I did before, is the digitalization. Digitalization at least means that within the car, we have changes. We will have a future architecture which is based on central servers, and then there will be added zone controllers, and all the EE architecture is driven and organized by operating systems. This is very similar to our normal handheld or personal computers. And the cars, the trucks will change very, very deeply in their architecture. In future, you can see and say that a car is built around the OS software, and all the cars or buses or trucks, they are combined to a mobility and traffic system by connected solutions, which is economically a platform, and which means technically that they are organized in clouds. Let me come back to the German energy system, where is mobility a part of? If you look to Germany, what is a country what is very different to the Scandinavian countries, where we don't find so much energy. So energy means today we have to import energy, and it means tomorrow we have to import energy. Today, you see that atomic energy is driven down very intensively. The three last big platforms will be ended in service end of this year. So we stop atomic and nuclear energy. Then we have brown and black coal, as called lignite or coal, which is traditionally a big part in Germany. But you see, because of the CO2 discussion, what we have in here, we reduce stepwise this usage of coal. Next thing is oil. Oil, the biggest part of this oil is used in traffic and mobility. Some of the oil is used in the chemistry industry. We want to reduce the oil what is at least fossil, and we want to reduce it by zero. And you know about the discussion what we had concerning natural gas. In the past, the German strategy was to find the first substitution of oil and coal by accelerating the natural gas consumption. And we now see that this strategy makes a lot of political problems, because 50% of the natural gas of Germany was imported by Russia, what we will end up as soon as possible. And you see that the renewable energies in Germany is not so much. So there is a big discussion how to import energy in future. And there is a lot of levers and a lot of future ideas what we will do. We will import for the first steps oil by other countries, natural gas by other countries. The change is running very quickly, much quicker than we had thought in the past that this is possible. And we will find the substitutes by renewable energies in the next years. You know about the European goals. You are part, at least, of the goals. Oh, sorry, have I lost you? Hello?
I can still hear you.
Hear you.
Okay, but you don't see my slides. Is it right?
We see the slide intensified emission targets.
Okay, thank you. So there was a problem because there was somebody trying to be connected via Teams from another line. Sorry, therefore. The intensified emission targets, on the European basis, we have different targets for the countries in Europe. We know that altogether we want to reduce by 55% in all the energy systems within Europe. But this means for Germany a reduction of 65%, and for some other countries, for example, in Eastern EU, it means a reduction by 10%. So in the past, we have seen that Germany is asked to run very in the first line to reduce the CO2 emissions. And you have seen by the slide of the energy consumption that this is also for Germany a big difficulty. Within the passenger car system, it means that one of the measuring KPIs is the CO2 fleet limits, which means we have to reduce them by 55% of vans. There is 50% up to 2030. We discuss about the end of the internal combustion engine, and it means at least that we have to halve the CO2 emissions within our traffic systems. If you look to Germany, this means that we have to raise the number of electric cars up to a third of our population. The German car population is 45, and up to 2030, we want to have a third of this population being electrified, which means at least that from on 27, 28, we will sell 80 or more % of the new vehicles fully electrified. We have to run up the charging infrastructure. Actually, we see there is not so many countries in Europe who have a good charging infrastructure system. We see that you can run around Norway, what is not EU, Netherlands, France, or Germany, but there is a lot of countries in East and South Europe where is the charging infrastructure not very well scheduled and sophisticated. And all the other topics have additionally to be done on the commercial vehicle side, on the bus side. We have to change the model split. So this is the German goals we have to fulfill until 2030 or 45. It is nearly 100% in all those lines. For the industry, this means the change of the energy system as well as the change of the digital system. It means that we have to work on structural changes within the companies as well as in the chains of supply, added by the complexity in the supply chains, for example, for chips, whatever, because we can't get the enough numbers of chips and other parts from Asia and whatever. So supply chains is this additional problem what we have to find solutions for. For the car industry, this means they have to restructure their companies. We see that there is a lot of companies in our region which are very, very well in line to organize and to work on those changes. Let me name some of the fantastic products, for example, coming out of Baden-Württemberg. For example, the Porsche Taycan, the Mercedes EQS, EQE, and all the other really highly sophisticated vehicles. You know that worldwide electric vehicles, even Asians or Americans, are built with German supplier parts. It starts up with fuel cells, ends up with electric engines. So the chances for the new products is really very great. On the other hand side, we have to manage the rundown of the industrialization of former parts and reducing the production of internal combustion engines. How do we manage this in Baden-Württemberg? In Baden-Württemberg, we have a format of discussing together between science, politics, and industry. It is led by our Minister President in Baden-Württemberg, accompanied by the CEOs of the big and the little companies, a lot of professors, and we discuss on a day-to-day basis what has to be done. And we have 3 columns in which we work. The one is the change of vehicles and production. The second is the data system, the embedded data system in the car, as well as the connected data system, and the energy system, because there has to be built up a new energy supply for electric current as well as for hydrogen. Especially yesterday, to give you an example, we discussed with a lot of professors of the universities in Baden-Württemberg, how can we intensify the education of younger people in the new technologies, and how can we give a good education to the academic workers and the workers in the companies to present them the possibilities for a lifelong learning, at least. So there is a lot of things to be done, a lot of activities, but the time is not enough to give you all the examples. At least 2 things have to be done to fulfill the requirements of the future system. The one is scaling of what we know. For example, scaling electric mobility, where we know a lot of things what we have to do. On the other hand side, if we look to climate neutrality, a lot of the things we actually don't know, and we have to intensify innovation and scientific research. We as eMobile BW, we support companies as well as research institutes by co-working. So we produce R&D projects. We have a very intensive network of hundreds of persons, which means at least it's nearly 200, as we call them, members. One member is the company, but there's a lot of persons within every company working together in projects, in activities. So it's a very lively working together on those changes. If you're interested in what is going around and which are the possible partners you can cooperate with, we have built up a booklet where you can read about some of the names. One is the SAP, and Zoltan later will talk about, and about universities. If you want to meet us at the Hannover Industry Fair, for example, meet us on the Electric Vehicle Symposium in Oslo, or what we really very appreciate is come to us on the Automotive Suppliers Day in Baden-Württemberg. There you can meet the experts of the companies, the research institutes, and there is a lot of chance of working together. We and Olli and Janne know, and Ilya as well, we really appreciate to co-work with our partners in Finland, and we hope that we will identify more and more projects what we can do together. So this is what I wanted to introduce today in the some minutes. If you're interested deeper in what we are doing, Felicitas is with me, and let us know what is your interest, and feel open to put any question to us. Thank you very much.
So good morning, everybody, also from my side. My name is Zoltan Nochter. I'm Hungarian, actually. Why I'm here is not because of this, but I am advisory board member of eMobile BW that Franz was just introducing you. And I represent their SAP. And I've worked at SAP for 17 years, meanwhile, most of the time in the area of research and innovation. As you may know, SAP delivers basically software and services, cloud services, to enterprise customers in different industries. These are 26 industries, actually, worldwide. In the context of product innovations, that's also my department, kind of. We actively, engage and involve and co-work with interested customers, and also external partners, so other ICT companies, basically. Just make sure that we deliver the right products on the one side, and also to bring them to the market in the right way at the right time. So that's why we always engage with customers, actually. And take as an example, so to say, and speak about this project and initiative called Catena X. Really a multi-party collaboration. That's what is interesting, I think. Catena is the Greek word, actually, for chain. So that's why it's called Catena X. And the X you will see in a second. Why is it? Basically, Catena X as an initiative and the project both aims to create a business network, which is in this industry, to basically it's not like addressing one company, dealing with his suppliers and customers and so on, but to create a network where you can model and run processes across these single, let's say, paths that one product has along the supply chain, to be it as a platform. For instance, to fulfill regulatory requirements that are already there today or will be coming in the next years, like Franz also referred to, for instance, CO2 tracking and these things. Yeah, and the idea is basically to supply chain entities as well as their data, actually, to create some added value, which make the net to offer data in a controlled way. So that's a really important point here to say that Catena X as a system and as a platform should actually offer highly distributed, as we say, federated data in these processes, but the data by doing so should, remain under the full control of its respective owner. So let it be a supplier or the OEM or who else that provides data in order to gain out something that he or she couldn't generate just based on his own data. So that's basically one of the fundamental ideas. And then, of course, the actual topics that are interesting for the automotive industry, be it the crises and so on that you know all, or other economic use cases like supply chain optimization, demand and capacity optimization. So also these kind of things are addressed here. Yeah. On the third slide, when I come to it, I hope you can see it too. This illustrates a little bit the situation we have in terms of the complexity and the relationship between the entities. Because it goes until the actual refurbishment and recycling of parts and cars and whatever. And that's an interesting thing. And all the use cases, I will show them later. These multiple with those use cases that that deal with different products, different components, and also go into the processes and into the data of different roles in this value chain, and try to build them up in an exemplary way and try test it out in the project, basically. It's very important to state, because of this co-usage of the data, that is not the intention, to create some huge central database, a copy of your company data. That's not what would work. It's not what is collaboration about, but we try kind of the opposite, to have a trustworthy collaboration in that sense. And that means that the system as such shall be built and operated in a trustworthy way, so that the customers always have the control, the users always have the control of their data. And in order to do that, so as it states already also in the middle, the security point, to be a federated data space, that's the terminology for that, for these participants. And this is follows like actually this the specifications, which is called international data space architecture. It's an initiative I think some of you may know. And that's in the project one of the first time that is really applied in practical use cases with real products and is behind. So it's not just testing out something. And on top of that, or on the bottom of it, in the way that we want to look at the operation of the systems as such, as in total, would follow the guidelines of Gaia X, which is one of the major initiatives or ongoing today in the cloud business, in the cloud part of the ICT industry, as you may know, to basically ensure the sovereignty and to make sure that European clouds are European clouds. If you have the choice, you can really run your respective solutions following these guidelines, and which are complying to specific laws and rules as well. It's not excluding, of course, other operators to follow them as well, outside Europe. Yeah, concerning maybe the structure of the Catena X initiative, and this is very typical for such things. I have seen many of them in the past. You may also know similar constructions in European research projects or European initiatives. We have here two sides. I wanted to speak a little bit. So the one is on the right. I don't know if you see the mouse. This is the Catena X network, which is actually an association that companies can join and be part of the game, helping define requirements and also be first mover testers or multipliers, whatever in this network. And basically, this is an open club to be joined. On the left-hand side, you see the other part of Catena, which has the same name, Catena X, which is a project actually with these. I think these are 28 members. So there is a consortium with 28 members who are doing different tasks within the R&D side of building the platform. Here you see the different names. You see not only IT companies, of course, you see actually more companies that are not primarily IT and do the right thing the right way, as I said. Yeah, and all of these members here, these 28, are working together, meet regularly, have a common project plan, swap working packages, and so on and so forth. And they all also, that's an important point to state, we are in the fortunate situation in Germany that the government supports us with funding, so you can have at least a partial compensation of your costs that you invest into this endeavor, because actually. And so this one is also a funded project, but not a new project, but a government-funded project. In these and their skills and resources, of course, into this game, covering these different areas. So you can see, for instance, Mercedes here active, Volkswagen active, BMW. BMW is also the consortium lead, doing all the administration and organization of meetings and so on and so forth, heavily involved. And then we have Siemens in different roles, covering tools and facilities, for instance, in the production domain at the beginning of the value chain, so to say, but also in the software side to collect those data. And SAP is more on the software part, of course. And then you can see the other parts of the puzzle. In the touch, as you can see here, multiple use cases in parallel that all address current, as I mentioned, hot topics within the automotive value chain. Of course, the actors are not only automotive companies, because we also have like BASF as a chemical company delivering material for automotive. They can be also part of the game because of that contribution, right? So in many ways, these use cases are all built on top of the so-called operating system, which is basically together with the systems of the local participants, so in their enterprise systems, for instance, ERP or planning or whatever, supply chain management software and so on, and data. So the operating system basically helps to do this orchestration, right? Using EDSA and Gaia-X means. In the most relatively the transfer and the scale up and the scale out of the whole thing, just to make sure that the ecosystem can grow already during the R&D phase, actually. So that's a very ambitious thing, I guess, not to have a static consortium working on something, but already during the project's R&D phase, we, as I show you, opened the doors to be joined and be part of the game as member of the association, so to say. With regard to the use cases, as I mentioned, this is an overview of those that are most important. it's not the final list. We are currently working on new use cases and additional ones. These are the ones that we started with. So like we have a traceability as an overreaching use case, you know, how you collect batch and also serialized level information about components that are built together and then encoded in different ways and following different standards, internal and external material numbers, all that stuff. How do you harmonize it and bring it into usable tools while using these IDSA and so on technologies to make sure that only the data that you want to kind of publish or let others use is really seeable in the system and available in the system and so on. So we have quality management, you know, that can also go back to the very first raw materials even, or in the production, can something go wrong, or during the delivery, what. And we have circular economy in terms of this sustainability, which is a very topic today in automotive, I guess. So we address that also by means of data and what can we do there to, for instance, resell used parts of cars and so on in an economically feasible way. So this is the collection of the current use cases, and the point is really just made for the big companies, as it states also in the top, but of course the SMEs. So the mass of the participants of such a network at some end, so to say, are SME companies, so small and mid-sized companies, in addition to the big ones like Mercedes and so on. The whole thing, as I mentioned, shall share a operating system called architecture, which is composed of multiple services that do different things in the architecture. I don't want to go into the details of it. You can see just the building blocks of this a tower here. Applications are fueled by the combination of different services that can really guide or even you know, pre-aggregate data or integrate different systems, making sure that you have the data transfer in the correct format and so on and so forth. So very much into the technical details. And this part shall only exist once. Many pieces of it are intended to be open source, but also commercial parts can also cover it. So, and the idea is here that the side, which also interesting, in addition to the operating system side for SAP, for instance. So the application side shall be also implemented by multiple vendors, so that the customer who wants to join a network, for instance, does have a choice to select which of the CO2 tracking system you actually wants to work with. The idea is that both are kind of certified to use the green part, and then the customer has this true choice to deploy the right application in his way and use it. Okay. In terms of the trials that we conduct, one of the ideas is here really to really early show that things can work, at least on a basic level. And we really try out very early phases shown in the project, how to connect 3 or 4 selected data sources and so on to run through the process, data and systems behind. So it's not box environment at the end. That's the intention, at least. And then try to grow up so that as the use case is maturing, because of this initial setup, it's maturing, and then we try to open it up and include more and more parties so that the use case has a vital ecosystem at the end. And we try to do this for each cases, more or less in parallel. And also here comes the role of these multipliers like eMobile BW that can help us to interact with the industry and attract them to join, like we are speaking today. So that's we try to scale it up already during the project's official lifetime actually. Yeah, and maybe as just a final slide or almost the final, is just to show you the timeline. We started with the project officially. That means the government funding was the first day on August 1, 2021. And the project's duration is 3 years. And maybe I just want to highlight one of the ambitious goals. I would say that at the end of the second year, the idea is that we have engaged with 1,000 partners within this automotive ecosystem in total. So that's kind of a goal where we say, okay, if this is kind of met, this goal is met, we can really say that's a true network of significant power, right? Not just a project, and that's the goal that people are after. It's not so much me in the IT side, but the people who drive this, let's say, pre-commercialization thing of the network and the whole initiative. Yeah, in case similar to Franz, in case you are interested in, of course, you can visit the webpage. That's the first thing. There you can even also apply for a membership, for being a member of the Catena X Association. So there is a, you know, you can start a request and then it will be discussed on and so on. You will be contacted probably to see and so on and so forth to work within the club, to be a member of the club. And also in there are regular news issued about Catena. So we have a troop of communications colleagues who do this professionally. We also have, or even there are multiple booths that will be you know, affected by Catena X at the Hannover Messe starting in June. So if you are there, you can have a chance to visit and see Catena X live as well. So that would be, I think, my part. Many thanks for your attention and joining the talk. I hope it helped you a little bit to understand what we do and how do we work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the invitation to this very interesting webinar. Actually, it's very nice to continue from where Dr. Sorry, I forgot the name. Dr. Nochta just ended. I'm giving hopefully to the same topic a bit different point of view. So my name is Mika Kataikko, and I'm working for the business development organization of the city of Jyväskylä. City of Jyväskylä is a small 150,000 people inhabitants city in very central Finland, known to be a student city. So 1/3 of us are students here in this city. And what I'm telling to you about is kind of a case example where a group of SMEs were co-developing intelligent transportation system offerings for automotive industry. And I'll illustrate a bit more on what was done in the next slides. So the content of the presentation includes 4 phases. So first of all, I tell you about the change of the landscape from value chains to value networks. And then I'll talk about needs and how to better understand the needs. And then I talked about offering, how we develop them. And then I'll also put in place some real results on the work, so that this is not only a theory, this presentation. Quite in many business segments, we are seeing still this sort of traditional value chain sort of structure where end customer is having sort of solutions, products from the supplier, who then has a supplier underneath, who then has a supplier underneath, and then these value chains can be extensive and very, very sort of complex. What we have seen is actually that more and more actually things and value tends to develop in value networks, where we still have the same customer, but then actually there are different layers for the services. There are the upper layer, where various different service providers are providing added value for the end customer. Then underneath there are new service providers that are providing added value for this first line of service providers, and then also underneath there can be additional sort of service providers, from where we can see that actually this is really a value network, having different roles and having different responsibilities. Quite often you can also put sort of blocks underneath this picture, where in the very close to the end customer there is an end user value added services, which typically try to fill the needs or solve the needs and requirements of the customer. Then under that block there is another block which is quite often kind of a business logic or data service block, where quite much of the value is really generated on top of data or on top of business knowledge or business understanding. Then underneath there are typically service platforms. They can be data platforms or access platforms or connectivity platforms or something else. And this, as I said, this we are seeing quite often nowadays when businesses develop that this kind of a network approach does apply. Okay, then some words about need-based approach. So obviously when we address this kind of a new service network, we should also know quite much on the customer needs, and quite often there is a difference between what customer wants and customer needs. Customer wants typically state of art, what is known to be the thing that needs to be developed in the industry, or then the customer may need also, they want competitive edge, so they know that this is the technology that their competitors are using, so maybe we also have to take this in our solution or our service. Quite often we are also seeing that there are those promises given by the suppliers, and then the story sort of spreads in the customer side, and then we hear that, well, I would also like to have that added value that this supplier or that supplier or that service provider is providing to its customer. Quite unfortunately, quite often also we do what we have done in past. So we do what has been developed earlier. We procure what has been procured earlier. We purchase what has been purchased also in the past. But what really then is the customer need? I put it very short. Actually, isn't it so that we should provide to the customer what makes best impact in the customer operative business environment? Simply and briefly, and where that leads actually, that shouldn't we also think the customer of the customer? So that for our customer, whether we are, for example, in the B2B environment, then the customer that is behind our customer should also have the best impact in their sort of business environment, and so forth and so on. So actually, in the end, we are providing best impact, best value for the end users, whomever they are. Quite often also what customer needs is actually something that is required by the laws and regulations. So we need to follow what has been sort of written in the asset laws and regulations, and do the development accordingly. Especially in the digitalization environment, we see lots and lots of regulation taking place in European Union today about the data, about the sort of data protection and so on and so on. So how can we access customer needs? What we have learned is that in order to understand local customers, wherever they are, there needs to be some kind of a locality in place. You cannot follow the customer from abroad, let's say it like that. And quite often we see that we need to have a partner to better understand customer needs. Also, since we are moving towards services more and more, these service infrastructures and this kind of layered service provisioning model, like I explained earlier, instead of traditional development where we develop based on hypothesis or try to resolute something or provide an offering, more and more we are to be in a customer-centric development environment where things like service design apply. And then it's about understanding the customer, like I explained earlier. It's about involvement of the customer in the development. It's true that some general needs may appear, as I said, to the regulation and standardization as well. There are certain trends that we need to follow. The mega trends, for example, there are things like blockchain or artificial intelligence or whatever, and those tend to be in the discussions that we have with the customers. So those do also apply as needs, and we need to apply and implement those in the solutions and services we provide. But they also tend to be local. So you need to understand where those technologies and solutions are applied. Technology push may still be possible, but more and more, in order to push the technology, you have to have a clear argumentation that is closely tied with the impact expectations or this sort of a service design functionality and process, customer centricity, I mean. Okay. When we talk about this kind of a service environment, obviously the individual organization is providing an individual offering or added value, and then having a liability to provide that as a service, which more or less is an SLA, service level agreement. And then in the network, we are having different kind of SMEs between the different organizations. And ultimately, what we can see is that the end user value actually is the sum of all of those. There will be those entities, those organizations that are there in the customer interface, and they obviously are fulfilling the sum of the SLAs. But generally speaking, we have to sort of sum up everything that happens in this network in order to provide the total offering. If the total offering doesn't match the customer need landscape, then maybe we should stop. There is no sort of argumentation to continue the development of the offering. If we are beyond the customer expectations, obviously that's a very positive environment. Then we can provide additional value for the customer, provide innovation or some sort of new aspects to their businesses, and that's a very good situation if we can provide more than the customer expects. If we are less, that may be a case, and quite often it is. But then the better we are providing that service that we promise to provide. It doesn't matter actually if you are less than the customer is expecting, since still you are fulfilling the needs of the customer. The best is that the total offering meets the customer expectations, and then everything is sort of working sort of perfectly and in good shape. So I promised to tell you that this is not only a theory that I told you. So we've actually done this kind of a cooperation initiative, and we did an impact analysis last year, 2021, on this work. 12 organizations were participating in a value network-based co-development initiative towards automotive industry in Baden-Württemberg. And this took place between 2017 and 2019. What we learned as part of this impact analysis that the cumulative increase of revenue in over the all organizations over the time period was more than 2/3. So 67% is increase of the revenue we saw. Then also what we saw is that more than 80% of the involved organizations increased their revenue over the time period. What was also told by the organizations is that they got new customers and new partners as part of this initiative. And finally, what we also heard from them is that additional revenue was also due to this initiative. Since we are a public organization, it's not their obligation to tell us anything. So we did this sort of impact analysis also partially as an inquiry from those organizations. That's what we heard them saying back to us. Since this is quite efficient way of working, we have been continuing this kind of a cooperation since 2019, and as we speak, we are still planning a next step in this sort of cooperation model, where again we are having sort of group of organizations providing added value in this kind of a value network. So that was shortly and briefly a case study on what we have been doing here in the city of Jyväskylä. Thank you.
So welcome and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eija Hämäläinen. I'm the cluster manager for Oulu Automotive Cluster. And in upcoming 10 minutes, I'll describe how we work with OEMs and SMEs. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Good. First of all, a few words about the automotive cluster in Oulu. Started in 2018. Today, we are more than 120 companies. Our biggest tier one player is Electrobit Finland, part of Continental. And majority of the companies in the cluster are small and medium-sized companies working in software business. For those of you who know Oulu is the Silicon Valley more or less in Finland, very famous for radio frequency research and development conducted by the local companies and especially the university. And that's why one of the reasons why we have so many researchers and education organizations in our cluster. Currently, we're working with more than 350 people. Not all of them are from Finland. We already have members from Sweden and Germany, even from Asia. And you can check the website, automotive.oulu.com, for further information, or you can follow us in LinkedIn. We are updating that quite regularly. For me, working as a cluster manager, it's important to somehow try to differentiate or tell the story why we do things differently or what we actually do differently. And I summarized here a few topics that we've been discussing with the OEMs. First of all, the connectivity. Our local university is already spearheading the 6G research. Now that we are heading to the more autonomous vehicles world, connectivity will be of great importance. The second thing, in the previous presentation, circular economy was mentioned, and that's where printed electronics gives great value. We have companies like Taktotech providing structural electronics, where you have thin plastic parts having electronics integrated. And as a result, electric vehicles become lighter and you have more design freedom. Plus, the assembly is much quicker. So the old traditional way of putting plastics in the automotive industry requires many parts. And in printed electronics, you can assemble 2 to 3 parts together to get the same functions. Embedded software, very strong in the region. And we also have some test beds. I just recently learned that the University of Applied Sciences has a test bed which is quite rare in Europe. There are 3 other similar sites available, one in Gothenburg, one in Austria, one in France, where you can simulate the hard utility vehicles in a digital environment, hardware in the loop, and dynamometer in the loop. Very technical stuff, but it's always good to hear that you can offer something which is not so common elsewhere. If we think about ecosystems, OEMs, usually giants, and the small and medium-sized companies, what can we do together? And I'm actually describing what we practically do. So that's why I have the how in the beginning of the presentation. First of all, sharing knowledge is crucial now that the transformation is so quick. How we do that is that we have on a regular basis cluster meetings. Either they are internal in the cluster, so the cluster members are representing their solutions, and also looking for partners. But we do that on other way around as well. So we invite OEMs, tier one players, to have a discussion and dialogue with us. And in this picture, we have one of the online events concepts that we have called Oulu Automotive Roast. Very simple concept. We are roasting with hard and difficult questions industry experts for 20 minutes. I'm doing that, and then the microphones are opened and the audience can do the same. Sharing knowledge, not only from what's going on in OEMs and tier ones in the whole automotive value chain, but vice versa. So what sort of solutions there are in the automotive cluster in Oulu, and how can they contribute the change in the industry? Second thing that we do is to find partners, find customers, and this also goes vice versa. So we are practically helping companies to seek automotive partnerships. And you probably know that Finland is more strong in ICT, so we are seeking those partners internationally, mainly in Sweden, Germany. We are starting to having discussions in Spain, where automotive industry is also very big, and we also have discussions in Asia, mainly in China. And before joining Oulu Automotive Cluster, I wouldn't. It was not a concept for me that a public utility like Business Oulu running this cluster would be able to help actually individual companies to find the partners and customers. But that's actually happening. And how we do that is to invite OEMs or tier ones just to describe us in very simple terms. What are the subjects that you are currently or in the near future working with? What are those buzzwords? What are the challenges that you might have? And sometimes we even get their questions or even titles. These are the topics that we are interested in. And what we do in the ecosystem, we scout for the relevant partners to have a chat with. And we can do that in digital terms, like in Teams today, or we can do that in trade shows. Actually, I'm currently in Gothenburg doing a trade show together with the companies from the cluster. It is important that the OEMs also, and I think that's one of the great things about ecosystems, you can actually help the OEM to find something, because I mean, there are so many companies and so many clusters. It is like a single point of contact helping them to actually reach for startups and scale ups that are not maybe so well known globally or in the industry. And what we also do, last but not least, we were discussing the Catena X, very nice presentation, and would love to continue discussion with you. The matching between the companies and researchers to support co-creation. And actually in the picture, it's a little bit, not that clear, but sorry, my computer is trying to reboot. Matching the researchers and companies to promote the co-creation, which is, from my perspective, is very demanding. It's not easy. We do that by having regular meetings between the researchers from the university and the companies in the cluster. And we try to identify those topics that are relevant for the companies, say 2 or 4 or 5 years span, so that it's actually promoting their business. And it's been a challenge, but looks very promising that the researchers actually can solve the business challenges that the industry is facing, whether it's about autonomous cars or safety issues or material innovations, for example. So 3 keywords: we try to share information, we try to find the customers and partners within the cluster and between the OEMs and SMEs, and we try to match the researchers and companies together. And those 3 keywords actually have resulted in that the cluster is growing. I constantly get feedback from the companies that we are now collaborating in another project. Actually, today I had a discussion about Origo steering wheel, which is one of the co-creation projects that companies have put together. 5 companies creating or reinventing the wheel as we know it in cars. So that's about it. I'm very happy to provide you more information if you are interested in joining Oulu Automotive Cluster, because this is an open ecosystem, and you can just reach me and I will happy to provide you further information or include you to our email list. Thank you.